Here we're looking at every NRL team's against the spread record for the past 5 seasons, going all the way back to 2019. So then we can pinpoint where the trends stand out. And so when you're betting on spread markets, line markets, handicaps, those kind of bets. So, for example, if we look at the Manly Rabbitohs game here, the line is Manly plus 1.5. So for Manly to win against the spread here, they either need to win the game outright or lose by 1 point. For the Rabbitohs to cover minus 1.5, they need to win the game by 2 points or more. If they won the game by 1 point, then the Sea Eagles would cover the spread. So that's how we generate the win-loss. And this data goes all the way back to 2019. I have the records for many seasons prior to that, but obviously I prefer just to look at the recent results because teams change over the years. But here, what we can see some trends over the previous seasons. Away sides have a slightly better record against the spread, and favorites have a better record against the spread. It doesn't really matter whether they're home favorites or away favorites. Both of them have performed well. We're also looking at the year-by-year results. So for the past 5 seasons, the favorites have had a winning record against the spread. In 2023, that was the first year where the underdogs had a winning record against the spread, and in 4 of the past 5 seasons, away teams have had a winning record against the spread. So that means that these overall records, or if you backed every favorite for every game all season, then you would have won overall in those seasons. Same with the away sides, but I definitely don't recommend you do that. What you want to do is find situations where teams have performed really well, because you need to win 53% of your bets in order to be profitable on $1.90 markets if you're taking $1.90 and staking it evenly every single time. So we need to find situations where you're going to win at a higher rate than that. And there is a bit of discrepancy between teams' overall records. Like you can see the percentages here, the Bulldogs at 43% were the worst team against the spread over the past 5 seasons, and the Sharks here at 56%. Other than the Dolphins, who've only had the 1 season, the Sharks were the best team against spread over the past 5 years. But most of the time, teams are fairly close. Like Broncos right on the 50%, Seagulls right on 50, the Warriors right on 50, and so on. So it's not much to be gained by looking at that. Hence why I look at home teams, away teams, favorites, underdogs, and how teams performed in different situations to find those trends that stand out. So for a trend to actually be something we want to pay attention to, the criteria is there needs to be at least 20 games. So I don't really care, these situations where the Warriors, when they're a favorite by minus 12.5 or more, they didn't cover any of those games. Not really excited about that because there's not enough games for it to actually stand out. But once there's been 20 games or more in that situation, 30, 40, 50 plus games, and then there's a big trend of 70% of the time this happens, then those are the ones that I want to be really looking closely at when I'm making my bets throughout the season. So the situational one that was the best over the past 5 seasons was the Cronulla Sharks when they're a home underdog. Exactly 20 games, 75% covered 15 of them. Another team that went at 75% for a situation was the Roosters. I'll move this out of the way. The Sydney Roosters in the final 9 weeks of the season, so rounds 18 to 27, they of 36 games covered 27 of them. So a really, really good record there for the Roosters at the end part, and we'll get to the bad record during the mid part in a second. Also, 3 other teams going at above 70%. The Canberra Raiders as an away underdog, 35 games in this situation, covered 25 of them, 71% there. Also at 75%, the Sydney Roosters, when they were a favorite, so minus 6.5 to minus 12, covered 24 of 34 games in that situation. So kind of when they're a medium favorite. And finally, the Melbourne Storm during rounds 9 to 17. So the mid part of the season, they're being undervalued consistently, 40 games and covered 28 of them. One team that is also an honorable mention, which we're potentially going to see quite a few times this year. So it'll be interesting to see how this trend holds up. Canberra Raiders as an underdog of 12 plus 12.5 or greater. They covered 8 of 10 games in that situation. So not the 20 games where, it's a real standout one, only 10 games so far. But we're going to see a few more numbers go into that category this season. So it'll be interesting to see how it holds up. Then looking on the reverse side, situations where teams really struggle to cover the spread. The Newcastle Knights, when they're an underdog, plus 6.5 to plus 12, 22 times they only covered the spread 5 times in that situation. And then a couple for the Bulldogs, who, as I mentioned, were the worst team against the spread when they're a small underdog. So plus half a point to plus 6, 33 games, only covered 10. And then also through the first 8 weeks of the season, 40 games, only covered 13 in that situation. Parramatta Eels, not quite enough games here. So this is kind of like an honorable mention, but it is 18 games when they're a favorite. So minus 12.5 or greater, only covered 6 of 18. And then finally, another situation with a bad record is the Roosters during this mid part of the season. 41 games, only covered 14 of them. So those are the ones where they really struggled. If you look at this table on the screen here, there's a lot of ones where they're hitting at 36%, 5 total situations, but this list could just continue going on and on. But as you can see, I hope you can see that there's a lot of situations that are, hitting at well above that 53%. So if you can find these situations, especially situations that are on the up with different sides, can be very, very profitable. One that I did forget to mention, I can see on my list here, the Dragons, another honorable mention. When they're a favorite, minus 6.5 to minus 12, only covered 3 of 12 in this situation. Doubt we're going to see that many games where the Dragons are a favorite by more than a converted try this season. But just in case, it's not all that profitable of a situation anyway. So hopefully this gives you some insight into how you can approach betting on games. This combined with looking at the statistics and analytics of different teams and combining that with the historical data. So one thing I like to look at in combination with this is what were the odds in previous matchups. So that game we spoke about earlier, the Seagulls and Rabbitohs, I go back and look at what were the odds last time these sides met. What was the handicap? Were, the Rabbitohs a 1.5 point favorite in that game as well? Or, were they a 6 point favorite and that line's adjusted dramatically? And then from that point, when that last matchup was, and also their previous matchups before that, how have those teams progressed since that point? So that's how, in a nutshell, quick overview of how you can make money betting on the NRL. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I'll be posting videos all season to help you make sure you're making really smart bets every week that contribute to being profitable all season long.